A lesson from the river. Sammy was a quiet boatman who lived in a peaceful little village by the river. Every day, he ferried villagers across the water through rain, sunshine, and storms. People knew him as gentle and kind, but they also noticed something had changed. His eyes looked distant. His smile was rare. Years ago, during a sudden storm, Sammy's younger brother had drowned in the river. Since that day, Sammy blamed himself. If only I had done more, he thought. If only I had seen the signs. The guilt followed him like a shadow. Even when the river was calm, his heart felt heavy. He carried his past like stones in his boat, each memory weighing him down. One quiet evening, after dropping off the last passenger, Sammy sat alone by the riverbank. The sun was setting, and the water shimmered with gold. Leaves floated gently by, carried away without resistance. As he watched the river flow, something clicked. The river never holds on. It doesn't keep what it's lost. It simply moves forward. Sammy realized he had been trying to carry the unchangeable. His past was not something to fix, it was something to learn from. That night, Sammy picked up a small stone and whispered, "For my brother, I let this go." He dropped it into the river. Not to forget, but to forgive. To live out the next morning, Sammy stepped into his boat with a deep breath. The wind felt lighter. The sky seemed brighter. And for the first time in years, he smiled because everything was okay. But because he chose to let go. The healing words of a child in a quiet riverside village. There lived a boatman named Sammy. He was strong, skilled, and dependable, but beneath his steady hands was a heart quietly breaking. Years ago, Sammy lost his younger brother in a tragic river accident. Though everyone said it wasn't his fault, Sammy couldn't believe them. "I should have been there. I should have done something," he told himself. Again and again, his days became routine. Ferry returned, but joy had vanished from his life. He rarely spoke, rarely smiled. The villagers noticed, but no one dared ask. One morning, a small girl named Amina came to his boat, holding her mother's hand. As her mother paid the fare, Amina looked up at Sammy with curious eyes. "Uncle Sammy," she asked, "why do you always look so sad?" Sammy was surprised. No one had ever asked him that, at least not so directly. He hesitated, then sighed, "Because I carry a heavy weight from yesterday." Amina blinked, then softly said, "But uncle, if you carry yesterday, how will you see today?" Her voice was gentle. Her words were simple. But they struck deeper than any sermon, deeper than any advice. That night, Sammy sat by the riverbank and repeated her question to himself. "If you carry yesterday, how will you see today?" He looked at the stars. He listened to the river's quiet flow. And something in him shifted. He hadn't needed a cure, or a long speech, or a miracle. He had needed kindness, honesty, a child's truth. The next morning, the sun rose like any other, but Sammy saw it differently. He smiled as Amina waved to him from afar. And when he pushed off from shore, it wasn't just the boat that felt lighter. The boat felt lighter after the death of his younger brother. Sammy was no longer the man who used to sing while rowing. He became quiet, withdrawn, living in the small riverside village where it all happened. Each time the river flowed, memories returned. The storm that night, the cry for help, his brother's eyes disappearing beneath the waves. "I should have seen it coming. If only I had held on tighter. It was my fault." These thoughts chained him down, like anchors on a boat that never moved, though outwardly he still ferried villagers across the river every day. One afternoon, a little boy stepped into his boat and asked, "Uncle Sammy, why are you always so sad?" Sammy hesitated, then softly replied, "Because I made a mistake I can never fix." The boy thought for a moment, then asked, "Did you ever say sorry?" That simple question hit something deep inside Sammy. He had never truly apologized. He had only blamed himself. That night, Sammy sat beside the river and wrote a letter to his brother. He poured out his sorrow, his regrets, and most importantly, his apology. Then, he folded the letter, placed it in a small glass bottle, and released it into the river, not to forget, but to forgive, to let go. The next morning, the villagers noticed something different. Sammy stood taller. He spoke more. The river was still the same. The boat was still the same. But that day, it felt lighter. The smile his brother would have wanted every morning. Sammy would wake before sunrise and walk quietly to the river. He never missed a day, not because he had passengers waiting, but because the river had become his way of remembering. Years ago, this same river had taken his younger brother during a sudden storm. Since then, Sammy's heart had never been the same. He thought that by mourning forever, he was honoring his brother's memory. By staying quiet, he was respecting the silence that came after the tragedy. By carrying pain, he was staying loyal to the past. But one morning, everything changed. A group of children were playing near the riverbank. Their laughter echoed across the water. One of the boys slipped and fell in nothing serious, just a splash. But in that instant, Sammy ran toward the edge, heart pounding. The boy's father arrived and thanked him, but Sammy barely heard. He was too busy watching the boy laugh as he climbed out, so full of life, so unafraid. That night, Sammy sat with his lantern by the water, thinking. "My brother loved to laugh," he whispered. "He would have wanted me to keep living, not just surviving." For the first time in years, he realized that honoring the past didn't mean freezing it in sorrow. It meant carrying it with grace. It meant smiling again because his brother would have smiled too. It meant choosing joy not as a betrayal of memory, but as a tribute to it. The next day, Sammy brought flowers to the river, not for mourning, but for celebration. He waved at the children. He hummed while rowing. And when someone asked him why he looked different, Sammy simply said, "I remembered that my brother's story doesn't end with sadness. It lives on every time I choose to live fully." The day Sammy finally looked up, the morning air was crisp, and a soft mist danced over the river. Sammy sat quietly in his boat, staring at the horizon. He had done this every day for years, but today, something felt different. He had spent so long looking back. Regret, sorrow, the weight of the past had shaped his every step, but slowly, with each quiet moment, each child's question, each evening by the river, something had begun to change. It didn't happen all at once. Healing rarely does. But on this particular morning, Sammy looked up, not just to check the weather or the current. He truly looked up, at the sky, at the sun, gently rising, at the birds in flight, and for the first time in many years, he didn't feel the ache of yesterday. He felt the beauty of today. He noticed the way the sun touched the water, how the ripples glistened, like silver threads. He felt the oars in his hands, not as tools of labor, but as instruments of life. Every sound, every scent, every breath, it felt like a gift. That day, Sammy didn't speak of the past. He asked his passengers about their dreams. He laughed when a child told him a silly joke. He even shared a memory, not a sad one, but a happy one, of fishing with his brother and laughing until they both fell into the water. And that evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Sammy sat once more at the riverbank and whispered, "I don't know how many days I have left, but I do know this today was a good one. Because when we stop carrying yesterday and fearing tomorrow, we finally see the truth."